The following podcast is taken from a live broadcast on Inspire FM.
Any health advice given, whether general, diet, physical or spiritual, is general only and must be verified by your doctor. If you need medical advice, please consult a doctor.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the latest edition of the Health and Fitness Show. I am your host for today, Suliman and we are broadcasting live from the studios of Inspire FM today on the 3rd of October 2019. Reaching listeners in Luton and surrounding areas on 105.1 FM. And we've had an upgrade with our servers, so we're reaching further than ever before. If you want to watch as well as listen, you can do that via the Inspire FM website. You can also join us via Facebook, and all you have to do is click on our Facebook video live link. This is a live show. The reason we do it live is so we can have your interaction. So why not get involved? You can do that by text or WhatsApp on 0777 948 1822, or if you prefer, you can call the studio on 01582 481822. Before we get on to today's topic and show, I just wanted to acknowledge the amazing work of the British Islamic Medical Association, who on Saturday had a very successful annual Lifesavers project, which saw over 125 UK mosques participating. That included our very own Bury Park Jamia Masjid. And I know thousands of people benefited from learning first aid, and they're looking to expand that project. If anyone is interested in learning more about the British Islamic Medical Association, they're having their second national conference on the 7th of December, and this will be the largest gathering of UK-based Muslim healthcare professionals passionate about the intersection of their faith and career. So for more information about that, you can visit www.britishima.org. So, as you'll know by now, every week we cover a different health-related topic, and I'm really excited to say that today we'll be talking about a new project called Talking Takes Off, and that includes a guest who is a long-term friend and a long-term colleague, Steph Cash, who's been leading on this. I've known Steph for over 10 years now, and just to take this opportunity to thank her for all the work that she does, and she's continuing to do in driving outcomes for Luton families. Your passion and commitment is quite something, and is a real inspiration, and it's been great that you've been able to work on this project that we're going to be talking about. So just a final reminder that before I introduce my guests or ask them to introduce themselves, the text or WhatsApp number is 0777 948 1822. So just before we get on to today's topic, can I ask you both to introduce yourself? If I start with Emily.
Hi, I'm Emily Martin. I'm a speech and language therapist. I work for the NHS in Luton and Bedfordshire.
Great. Thank you very much for giving up your time to be with us this evening.
Thank you for having us.
Steph.
Hi, my name's Stephanie Cash. I work for the Luton Council, and I'm delighted to be here to talk to you about the Talking Take Off programme. I am working as the programme lead for this project, but I am also working with our project in Luton called Flying Start, which is our early years pregnancy to 5 strategy.
Great, thank you for that. So obviously this is the Health and Fitness Show, and we've dedicated a whole show today to the project Talking Takes Off. So can you just outline why communication is important and how that relates to health?
Absolutely. So communication is a real fundamental life skill. It's something that a lot of us take for granted. We use it all day, every day without thinking about it. But actually the impact of poor communication can have massive effects on our mental health, our emotional development and our learning. So it really has a lot of wider impacts on children, development, learning and later life chances as well.
Sure, and I guess that's why the NHS is, taking such a keen interest in it.
That's right. Yes, there are a lot of speech and language therapists employed by the NHS. It's also making communication everybody's business. So we have a lot of colleagues from education, from Luton Borough Council, which is amazing, and a lot of wider colleagues working to support communication.
Great.
And it's probably worth mentioning, Suliman, we were really fortunate in Luton because we got some funding from the Department for Education, who are really interested in the importance of early communication language. The programme that we're delivering for the Department for Education is all around tackling inequalities and making sure that children particularly have the best start in life. And the aim of the project really is about making sure children's communication language is strong before they start school, so that when they do start actually their school years, they're able to talk and communicate effectively. That's important to make sure they can engage with their actual learning, but it's also important to make sure that when they start school, they're able to make friends and join in school activities. It's a real concern for some children who actually are less able to do that. And that's what the project's really about, tackling some of those difficulties that children may have if they haven't had the right support to give them the best start in life.
Yeah, and we've discussed it on the programme previously. It's a kind of reoccurring theme around just appreciating how important that 0 to 5 age is in a person's development. And I think a lot of parents might think, well, education kind of starts when they get to school, but actually in reality the building blocks for it start way sooner than that, don't they?
They really do, Suliman. And actually within our work, and probably when you're talking to colleagues, they would say it starts actually during pregnancy. We really need to start at the very earliest stages of pregnancy, making sure we get the messaging right, that people understand the importance of a healthy pregnancy, speaking to your baby while it's in the womb still. And then obviously as soon as the baby's born, we need to focus on supporting those messages around playing, talking, chatting, cuddling and responding to your baby, the 5 to Thrive messages, which we're really proud of in Luton, that are key messages that we share with parents. And now we're talking very clearly about really expanding a little bit more on why it is so important to talk and play and respond to your baby and your toddler, to make sure that their language development takes off, really. That's why we've called the project Talking Takes Off. It is so important. The early years are vital.
Great. And you mentioned there, obviously, Luton has received some additional funding from the Department for Education. Can you just touch on, in terms of some local data around why this is important for Luton?
Yeah, okay. So when we made the application to the Department for Education, we had to share with them some data that made them decide that Luton was worth investing in. And some of the data was linked to the levels of deprivation and poverty in the town. So we know we do have some wards where we've got quite high levels of poverty, and some of the data was really around the level of readiness for school that some of our 5-year-olds have. In some of our areas of Luton, it's not as good as we'd like it to be. Although we do really well with children, it could be better. And those were the two reasons, really, deprivation and readiness for school data, that made the Department for Education decide they wanted to invest here. Sure.
So it's fair to say that in Luton there's a lower percentage of children who are ready for school in terms of language.
Yes. That's absolutely right, particularly in some of our wards.
Yeah. So we always find there will always be some children who have a communication difficulty. That might just be part of their genetic makeup, just who they are as a person. It might be associated with another condition. But what we find is there are other children who have got communication needs. They're not quite where they should be. Like Steph said, they're not ready for school in terms of having the language levels to access the curriculum. And that's what's really exciting about this project, because they are the children that we can help to target, to get some early support in, some early advice, give them that boost so that they are ready to start school and access all their learning and development they need for better life chances later on.
Great. And so, obviously every child is different, and as parents, we want what's best for our children. Just want to understand in terms of why is it so important in terms of early intervention rather than just waiting and seeing, how it pans out?
Absolutely, that's a really good question. Early intervention is the key. It's something there's lots of research into, and we know that has a massive impact. It's not always about identifying early in life. It's about when we've identified there's a concern, we're acting on it. We know that that's reassuring to parents if they are concerned, but also the earlier we get the advice in, the quicker the child can develop, and also it can prevent difficulties from escalating. So if we watch and wait, there is a chance that those difficulties will escalate, and then we have more work and more support to do later to help them.
Sure. And so just want to really get into the detail around Talking Takes Off. So just, for someone who's never heard of it before, can you just explain what is Talking Takes Off?
Okay, so Talking Takes Off is a project which we've been funded for, as I said, for a year. And it's really about looking at how all the different partners in the towns, that includes our health partners, our early years partners, our education partners, our parents and communities, work together to actually look at how we best can support families and children to develop those rich vocabulary experiences. So we've got a whole range of different work streams happening that are really geared up to deliver that outcome. Key, I think, is we've got a large amount of work going on training. And training is focused on both our workforce, our professional workforce, but also our voluntary sector partners as well. If we can train our colleagues to have the right messages and consistent messages about why communication and language in the early years is so important, and why we need to identify children earlier and what support we can offer, we believe we can actually make a difference to children's outcomes. So training is a really important part of our programme. The other really important part of our programme is about getting messages out to parents. So coming on the radio today is super, and making sure that we can get messages out to parents where they can find out what the right things to do with their children. And it's really simple things. We're not asking for people to do anything more complicated than thinking about how in their everyday activities they can really start to think about how they include their children in language. And that can be when they're shopping, when they're going to pick children up from school, when they go to the park or to the doctors, wherever they're going, making sure that we're using a really good vocabulary, using lots of chatting and talking with children to widen their experiences. I think it's really important, Suliman, to say also that in Luton we know there's a lot of languages spoken. We're often asked, well, should I be speaking to my child in English if actually English isn't my main language? Our response to that, and what our messages will be saying, is speak to your child in the language that you speak most confidently. That is the most important message, really, so that your child can get that vocabulary, get a good wide range of words and sentences and language. And then when they get to school, they'll be able to pick up English really confidently and easily. So those are some key messages.
Yeah. Because just when I was kind of reading around it a little bit, is in terms of what's important to kind of remember is it's about communication, isn't it, rather than necessarily English.
Absolutely.
I think sometimes we confuse the two in terms of what we're talking about when we're saying about communicating with children, particularly very young children, kind of baby noises and this kind of thing. That is a form of communication,
Absolutely.
Isn't it?
And, from the very beginning during pregnancy, just humming, singing, talking to your baby. But actually once the baby's born, any sort of, you might be doing nursery rhymes, you might be playing music or just lullabies, whatever it happens to be, in whatever language, that's the start of good communication. But also equally important is actually looking and responding with your baby and your child, so that you've got Emily's looking at me now and she's smiling, and I've got eye contact with her and she's nodding at me and laughing. But that engagement, that communication, that's really important with a parent and a child. It's that interaction, that responding. That's all what communication is about. It's not just language.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And what's I think what's possibly difficult sometimes is as parents is that, particularly with younger children, is you might not feel as though they are necessarily getting anything from it, if that makes sense, because obviously they can't respond to you in terms of with full sentences or words, etc. Or they might get easily distracted by something else, for example. But you kind of have to, it's so important, isn't it, to communicate with your child, and that is having such a powerful impact on them.
Exactly. So just having fun, cuddles, laughing, tickling, those are all important things. You're a dad, aren't you?
I am, yeah.
So you know exactly what, when you're playing with your children, that sort of engagement, that fun you're having, that's communication.
Absolutely.
And they enjoy it, they love it, they thrive on it, and that's the start of it, isn't it? And then building the language and singing to them and playing and counting and all of that is just generally what we want to do more of, really.
That's it. It's that two-way message as well. Like Steph said, it's that interaction, and that's something we really want to promote. And exactly things like peekaboo games, where you're saying something and they're responding. Like you say, it might not be a full sentence, but a look, a smile, body language, it's all still really important. And I think as adults, we can get really preoccupied with the talking element and using sentences, and we forget as adults how much of that non-verbal communication we use. It really supports the messages that we give, and by responding to that in our young children, we can then add the words on later. They've already got that element of communication and giving and receiving messages.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I'm really bad at is that I'll be on my phone, so I'll be talking to my son or my daughter, but I'll be on my phone. So. And that's creating quite a bad habit for them, isn't it? In terms of, you can kind of talk to someone, but you're not looking at them, and that's so it's great that we're doing this topic, because I've stopped doing that now, because Steph's looking at me like, if you do that again.
I mean, to be fair, it's a difficult one, because when you look around, everybody is on their phone, and people are using tablets and social media, but actually, we need to find time to recognise that we need to be communicating with the children as well. There's a place and a time, I think.
That's it.
Would you agree?
Absolutely, yeah. And like you say, Steph, technology is a part of our lives these days. We can't ignore it, but it's about being sensible with how we're using it. And exactly that, Suliman, just recognising, hang on a minute, I can put the phone down for 2 minutes, but the reality is sometimes we do all need to check in with ourselves. If you're using technology with your children, if you're using screen time, try and use it as an interactive experience. So you're talking about things that they're seeing, maybe extending their learning. So if they've seen a character do something on a TV show, I don't know, go for a picnic, maybe you could go for a picnic too. So you're actually using that technology as an interactive experience. And that's the thing that technology is missing, is the feedback, and that response, really.
Sure. And so just sorry, Steph, you made the point there, so talking takes off, it's got this whole element around training. So I just want to be really clear for anyone listening, because we have a phenomenal voluntary and community sector in Luton, and so what is the training used for voluntary sector? Can you just expand on that?
I can indeed. So the training that that I'm describing is our universal training for everybody. We've called it, I'm just looking at Emily, Talking Takes Off Takeaway Training.
That's it.
Because anybody who comes on our training will get free takeaways to take back into their voluntary sector organisation or into their early years setting. So it's great training, it's all free. We've also organised some particular sessions for our voluntary sector organisations, so that's being marketed at the moment. But either if they phone the Flying Start office, and I'll give you the number, which is 01582 548356, they can get information about the training. And we've got training starting next week, actually. We're really excited about that. And the training for the voluntary sector, if they want to come to a separate session, just because it's a twilight session, is in November. Great. So I think you make a really valuable point about the voluntary sector. They're key for us in terms of reaching so many communities. Yeah. And if we can be working with the voluntary sector and making sure they've got all of our messages, they're in they're in a good position to get those messages out to the community.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, there's another interesting part to the project, and I just want to talk about, which is our ICANN volunteers. I don't know, Suliman, if you've heard of our ICANN communication volunteers. So they're volunteers from the community. They come from a range of different community backgrounds, speaking different languages. They've been trained in our key messages, and they work in the community, sharing those messages with their neighbours, local people that they may go to school with, or where they feel comfortable sharing the messages perhaps in their faith organisations. So our ICANN volunteers are really useful to link into as well, because they can take the messages right out into the community. The project, as I said, is a year. From about November of this year onwards, I'm going to be doing some more local neighbourhood work. So I'm going to be working with our community development team here in Luton, elected members, and the voluntary and faith organisations, and start in some of the wards where we know we've got higher needs to get some networks going, getting people passionate about Talking Takes Off and getting them involved in ideas about how we can support and make a difference. So I'd really be keen for people to contact me if they're interested in getting involved.
Yeah.
My email address is stephanie.cash@luton.gov.uk. Please get in contact if you're a voluntary sector organisation and want to find out more. We'd love to hear from you.
Great, that's really helpful. And there's also a page dedicated to it on the Flying Start website, isn't there?
There is, absolutely. So I've got the email website address. We've got a dedicated page, as I say, lots of information on there. So if you want to go and have a look there, you can go to flying-start-luton.com/Talking Takes Off.
Great. And so we're very fortunate here on Inspire that we've kind of been able to get you guys on, and you've got a launch event coming up next week, which we're going to be talking about in a bit more detail. Listeners, thank you to those who've already WhatsApp. We will be getting to your messages shortly after the break. But do continue to be involved and get involved. You can do that by text or WhatsApp on 0777 948 1822, or you can call the studio on 01582 481822. That number again, 01582 481822. We're just very shortly about to be approaching our advert break. Can we just very quickly touch on the launch event and then maybe come back to it afterwards?
That's fine. So next week in the Mall in Luton, Central Square, on Thursday the 10th of October, we'll be having our launch event, Talking Takes Off. The focus will be around Dear Zoo, the book Dear Zoo, and throughout the day from 10 till 4 there'll be lots of activities for families to get involved in. We've got the library involved with us, our Flying Start Children's Centres will be running some sessions, also Active Luton will be doing some music and movement sessions, and we'll have some slots where we've got different people reading stories to children. There's lots to do down in the Mall, so we'd love you to come down and join us.
Great, fantastic. I know as a parent I'm always trying to find free stuff to do because everything costs money, but this is you've got quite a lineup, haven't you? Robin, the chief executive, is going to be involved as well, is he?
Yeah, he's coming down at 1 o'clock, and he's agreed to read a story to the children, which I think is great. He's passionate about this subject. It's really important for us to have him there, so yeah, we're really excited.
No, that's great. I mean, I think we're all excited about it because it's so important to the future of the town in relation to, you know, the importance of communication and speech and language. So after the break, we will be talking a little bit more around some of your specific questions around speech and language. We will be delving in a little bit more around children or families who might be bilingual, for example, just to understand that. There's quite a lot of kind of myths or misunderstandings around that specifically, and I've had some questions in around like use of technology like YouTube and stuff like that as well, so hopefully we can kind of come to that as well. So just a final call out to our listeners: if you do have any more questions, this is your chance. It's a live show today on Thursday the 3rd of October, and you can get in touch by text or WhatsApp on 0777 948 1822, or you can call the studio on 01582 481822. 2. Hopefully you're enjoying what's coming up, and we've got a range of different topics coming up. In a couple of weeks we'll be doing a show specifically on menopause, so that's coming up on the 17th of October, and that will be with myself. And we also have a show next week with Fahad Matin, the main man, who will be discussing more around the importance of physical activity and how that can help with stress and other conditions. So please do stay with us. And just finally, Steph, could you just recap the details for the event next week?
Yes, so the event's in the Mall in the Central Square. It's running from 10 till 4, and it's a free event, and there'll be lots of information and opportunities for you and your children to get involved in activities.
Great. So the library is going to be there.
Library's going to be there. Talking about Book Start, we'll have Active Luton there doing some sessions, physical activity and music type sessions, and the children's centres will be there running sessions around the Take 5 Cafe and other bits and pieces. There'll be lots of information and some freebies as well.
Great. And whereabouts in the Mall is it?
So that's the Central Square, which is near the information point.
Okay, so
right in the centre,
right
big
in the middle.
square.
Yeah, great. So lots of partners there. It's really important that you've got the library involved as well.
Yeah.
I mean, what's their role within the project?
They're really important, really, because the library has a wealth of books, both in English and in dual language. They are very keen to get children into the library as early as possible, for parents to come in really from very young to join some of their sessions that they run in the library, but also to encourage children to take books home to read as well. We are so lucky in Luton.
We are.
We haven't lost our libraries like many places, so really important. And they help us with a book start scheme as well. So all children are given free books when they're babies and when they're 4 to 5 years old to help with that idea of supporting language development.
Fantastic. We'll pick that up again after these short advert breaks.
You're listening to an Inspire FM podcast, making available our popular programs from our daily broadcast on Inspire FM.
Any health advice given, whether general, diet, physical, or spiritual, is general only and must be verified by your doctor. If you need medical advice, please consult a doctor.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to the Health and Fitness Show. I'm your host for today, Suliman Rafiq, and we are broadcasting live from the studios of Inspire FM today on the 3rd of October 2019, reaching listeners in Luton and surrounding areas on 105.1 FM. If you'd like to watch as well as listen, you can do that by clicking on our Facebook Live link. You can also join us via the Inspire FM website. Just like to take this opportunity to thank listeners who've got involved. It really does add to the depth of the conversation that we're having, and in particularly would like to thank a listener who's called in with a question, and we will be covering that as well. So just for anyone who's joining us a little bit later and missed the introductions, could I just ask the guests to introduce themselves again?
Absolutely. So I'm Emily Martin. I'm a speech and language therapist.
Hello, my name is Stephanie Cash. I am the programme lead for Talking Takes Off, and I work for the local authority, Luton Council.
Great. Thank you very much for giving up your evening to be here and talking to us about Talking Takes Off, the importance of communication, particularly in those very early years. So just before the break there, we were encouraging listeners to get in touch, and we had a message passed on to us. Emily, could you just address the question and what the response would be for that?
Absolutely. So I understand somebody's called in and they are concerned about their child's communication development. Really good first step is to talk to your child's preschool setting or school if they're in a setting. They'll have lots of information about your child's development and they'll have been making their own observations. So they'll be able to really help you out. As Steph said earlier in the programme, we're doing a lot of training with Talking Takes Off. So we're really looking to upskill the local population and also some of our local professionals. And they'll be able to give you some really good first advice. If your child needs to have a speech and language therapy assessment, that's no problem. They can help you with that referral onwards. very often some of our children, they still need that advice, but actually our schools, our health visitors, our children's centres are really, really highly trained, and they've got lots of knowledge to offer and support to give. So it's a really good first step to go there and to start to talk about the concerns that you've got, share your concerns and look for some support there first.
Fantastic. So, and we're so lucky in Luton to have a wide range of children's centres, Flying Start centres. So it'd be good to get in touch with them.
Yes.
And get that first line advice.
Yeah, they're really great members of staff with lots of advice and support to offer.
Fantastic.
It's just to make it easy for people. If you want to get details about our children's centres, then if you search for flying-start-luton.com, you'll have information about the Flying Start Children's Centres, their timetables and contact numbers.
Great, fantastic. Just quickly, in terms of a few of the questions we had in just before the break. So one was in relation to a young child who was learning quite a bit of numbers and letters from YouTube. What would your, as a speech language therapist, what would your thoughts on that be?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we can definitely utilise technology. The key with communication is thinking how we can take that vocabulary, all those words that children are learning from YouTube, and actually using them in conversation. And that's where that interaction side of things comes in. So it's really important, if your child is interested in numbers, if that's what they're learning, think about how you can introduce numbers into your daily routines. So maybe counting the stairs as you walk up and down them. And that interaction will really make the difference and help your child actually go from copying words from YouTube and repeating them back to using them in conversation with you.
Great, fantastic. And just the other question, it might have been the listener joined us a little bit later on, because I think you touched on it at the beginning, Steph. So this was just in relation for families whose first language is not English. The question is, does communicating with toddlers in their own language instead of English impact a child's development?
No, as I said, I think what's the important message here is parents are encouraged to speak to their children in the language they're most confident in, whatever that language is. And then as time goes on and the child then starts to learn English, they'll learn English confidently. Our worry is if parents are trying to speak to children in English and they're not confident in English, that's not really as helpful as speaking in their own confident first language. I think that would be my opinion. And Emily, you'd agree?
Absolutely. And just really to make clear that speaking more than one language doesn't cause or contribute to any kind of communication delay or difficulty. It's actually a really natural thing for the brain to do, to use more than one language. So it's a really positive thing.
Sure. And then just the last one before we move on is just in relation to where families' first language is English. But they want their child to learn their kind of native language, as it were. Given that the child would learn English at school, what's the kind of thinking around that?
Absolutely. If you have another language that you use and you're proficient in, you can absolutely introduce it to your child. It's really dependent on each family and their makeup, but a really nice way to introduce it is to maybe have different parts of the day. So maybe you have breakfast time in your second language, or birth time, or maybe at home you speak one language, but when you go out you speak another. What's really important is to keep it consistent in that manner. So try not to mix languages. So for example, if you're showing your child a banana, try not to say banana in English and then banana in your other language, because that can be confusing. You're jumping across the languages. Okay. Try and just keep, like Steph said, that the message is to keep speaking naturally rather than jumping between the languages. When children start to talk, if they're bilingual or have two or more languages, sometimes they will mix their languages.
Sure.
And that's a really typical thing. If they don't have a particular word in the language they're speaking, they might just borrow it from another language. Great. But for us as adults, try and stay consistent.
Consistency, yeah. And that, as you mentioned before, eye contact is much more to communication than just a verbal communication, body language, eye contact, etc.
I think it's quite important also, I think important that, this is not just a mum's job. This is a mum, dad, grandparents, brothers and sisters, anybody significant in a child's life. I think it's really important that we are all actively talking and communicating with children. Sometimes it's seen as the one parent's job, and it's not. And I think there's something really important also about the role of dads and grandparents in supporting this language development, isn't there?
Absolutely, yeah. It's everybody's business. At the end of the day, we communicate with lots of different people in our lives, so everybody who's communicating involved with our children can make the most of these messages.
Sure, fantastic. It's a really fascinating topic. Time is getting away with us. I'm conscious we're going to be approaching the Azan break in a few moments. So what we'll do, just to give it justice, is after the break we'll pick up on the Talking Takes Off launch event, because I know there's some really exciting celebrities and really exciting people getting involved in that, so I'd like to discuss that in more detail. And then if it's okay, we're going to come on to some specific questions around stammering, for example, maybe tongue tie, and some of the more specialist kind of areas before concluding. But I'd just like to thank listeners again for their interaction. It really does help with the quality of the show. So I think we're going to be shortly going to the Azan break. So just finally like to recap the telephone numbers for anyone interested in getting in touch, and you can text or WhatsApp on 0777 948 1822. That number again, 0777 948 1822. Or if you prefer to call the studio, as someone has done, you can do that on 01582 481822. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to the Health and Fitness Show. I'm your host Suliman Rafiq, and we are broadcasting live from the studios of Inspire FM today on the 3rd of October 2019. I must say, you guys are making my day. I don't think I've ever had this many questions, and they're all so interesting and positive. So thank you very much for listening and sticking with us throughout this show. We are now approaching the final segment. I do want to just hand over to Steph in relation to, can you just give people of Luton a bit more information about their launch event?
Yes, so the launch of Talking Takes Off is next Thursday, which is the 10th of October. It will be in the Mall, Central Square, which is near the information point. We'll be there from 10 till around 4 o'clock, and we do hope you come down to visit us. During the actual day, there's various activities. I've got the programme in front of me, so I'm just going to pick some of them out for you. There'll be at 10 o'clock story time read with the Luton Libraries service, and at 10:30 we've got some sing and sign music sessions, which has been run by the Flying Start Children's Centre staff. At 1 o'clock, Robin Porter, who's the Chief Executive of Luton Council, will be down there reading our Dear Zoo book to the children, which will be really nice to see. And then for 2 o'clock and 2:30, we've got some sessions with Active Luton. They'll be delivering some music and movement sessions with the children. So lots of fun things for children to get involved in. But at the same time, some really interesting stalls with information for parents around why communication language is so important and what they can do themselves to help in improving their children's talking. And there'll be some freebies for parents to take away as well. So we're really excited, and we do hope you will join us on the day.
Absolutely. And I think the word you used there, which I loved, was fun. And so often, a lot of the topics, we're often reminding people they can't do this and they can't eat that, and it's all a bit down. But the fact that with this, it is really about having fun with your children, and creating a better relationship with them. And like you say, the whole family, not just mum, but mum, dad, uncle, auntie, grandparents, everyone.
We're so excited, actually. You're so right. This is about fun and enjoying children.
Yeah.
We're really excited also because we've got some really key endorsements on this project, which I think is really positive. So Luton Town Football Club are supporting us, and we've got a poster of their team supporting Talking Takes Off. Great. So we've also got support from Jordan Reynolds, who's a local boxer who boxes for, I think, Great Britain. And we've also got the winner of the Great British Bake Off. It's Nazia Hassan.
Nadia Hussein,
Yes, she's actually endorsed Talking Takes Off.
Amazing.
So all those people recognise how important this is. So we're really excited about having their endorsements. And now what we need is for parents to get on board with us and join in.
That's it. And like you say, Suliman, it's all about fun. And actually, that's what communication is, especially for our very young children. Communication is learnt through play. So actually, parents have that biggest role in their child's development, just having fun, playing, enjoying, responding and interacting with their children. That's what makes the biggest difference.
Great. So listeners, thank you very much for engaging with us on Facebook. So there's just a question here in relation to how can we help children speak more clearly if they stutter or stammer?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So stammering, stuttering, it's all the same thing. Stuttering is a slightly more American or Australian term. We tend to use stammering. You might also hear speech and language therapists call it dysfluency, which is just a bit more of a fancy term for the same thing. Stammering can take a few different forms. So often we think about repeating the first sound, or it could be repeating a whole word. Or sometimes we can get a bit stuck with our talking. One of the big things with stammering is not to draw our children's attention to it if they don't realise that they're stammering. Make sure we just give them plenty of time, keep eye contact and wait for them to finish their sentence. It's really good to be a good model for our children if they're stammering as well. So sometimes children can just try and talk too quickly, and then that's when the stammering occurs. So if we as adults try and slow down our pace of talking, children will naturally model that and do the same thing. So just give them lots of time and space. Don't tell them to stop and start again, because like I say, often they don't realise they're doing it. So that can just draw attention to it and make them think that they're doing something wrong. But if you need some more advice, Steph's already given the website out for Flying Start Luton and Talking Takes Off. Within that, there are lots of links for more information if parents need anything else.
Great. And just when I was looking into this is the Child Speech Bedfordshire website, which is very user-friendly, isn't it?
That's it. That's it's brand new this month. Our local NHS speech therapy website. So childspeechbedfordshire.nhs.uk. There's loads of information on that website about different development and advice and where to go to get some more help.
And what was quite nice about it was it can be age specific, so you get different sections for different ages of children, because
That's
obviously you know the advice for a very young child is going to be different to an older child and this kind of thing. I just want to fire through a few of these in terms of terms people may have heard. So what is tongue tie when people say that?
So people often talk about being tongue-tied when they get stuck for words, but it is a real thing.
Right.
So tongue-tie is when the little bit of flesh underneath our tongue, which is called the frenulum, it's that little stringy bit. If you look in the mirror and raise up your tongue, it can be a little bit thicker than usual, it can be shortened, and that impacts on how much the tongue can move. Most of the time tongue tie is identified at birth, or there might be some early feeding issues, and that's really where tongue tie causes the most difficulty with feeding. So when children are very young, with babies, they can have that tongue tie snipped. Later on, sometimes it can cause difficulties with particular speech sounds that rely on the tongue to move up and down, and it can get snipped later on in life, but it's relatively more unusual for that to happen. The important thing to remember if your child does have a tongue tie is that actually it won't impact on the words that they're using. It might just impact a couple of those speech sounds.
Sure. And then obviously we're talking about communication, and so I believe 1 in every 1,000 child is born with severe or profound hearing loss. Can you just touch on how that works?
Absolutely. So those listeners who've had children will know that you get a newborn hearing test, and often that can be the first sign and the first indicator of hearing loss. The other hearing loss that we come across sometimes later in childhood is a temporary hearing loss called glue ear, and that's a fluid build-up in the inner ear which sometimes happens. And obviously with any child with a hearing impairment, it will impact on how they're hearing people use language around them, and then how they're learning and taking language in. If your child does have a hearing impairment, it's good to do things like get down to their level, establish eye contact, maybe tap them on the shoulder before you're speaking to them, so they know that you're speaking to them, and just be aware of things like distractions. So try not to have the TV on as background noise.
Sure.
Think about all the different noises that children can struggle to process and differentiate between.
Sure. Just one of the questions here is around, Steph, I'll probably look to you on this one in relation to saying here, my niece speaks in 2 languages simultaneously. Means half of her conversation is in English and the other half is in Urdu. Is that, what would you say about something like that?
I talked to Emily actually on that one.
I was trying to give Emily a break.
I know you are, but I'm not the technical specialist.
That's okay. You have a speech therapist in your program. I can talk for hours.
Go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So if your child is talking back to you or your niece and she's using kind of different words, the chances are she's just trying to work out which language is which. So we know that if children are learning 2 languages simultaneously, especially before the age of 3, first of all, they'll learn the 2 languages. There's one big language basically, and it takes a little while. They're usually about 3.5 before they start to separate those language systems out. It's not just the words, but it's also things like the grammar, the word order in sentences. So it takes some time. So as long as you as the adult keep being a really good model and keep using that language consistently, that's absolutely fine. Something we often find actually is that if you're using a home language and then your child starts at school, they very quickly pick up that all their friends use English, and it is something we often hear from parents, that children will come back home and they might not want to talk their home language, they might prefer English. But it's really important to keep talking your home language, because obviously it comes back to speaking with relatives, cultural identity. If you speak in your home language and your child replies back to you in English, that's quite common, but actually it shows that your child has still understood that home language. So keep talking in your home language, don't give up.
Fantastic. That's really reassuring, because it's what we do. Ibrahim will constantly respond to us in English.
That's it.
But like you say, he's understanding it. So that's
exactly.
Helpful. Just one around specialism in regards to voice production. So obviously communication, that might be a concern for some.
Yeah, definitely.
Can you just touch on that a little bit?
Yeah. So voice difficulties can happen with children as well. We see them more often in adults, because as adults tend to abuse our voices a little bit more. But some children will have difficulties with, maybe they have a persistent sore throat, their voice sounds hoarse or croaky or strained, and it's just about how we use our vocal cords. So it's really good to think about things like drinking lots of water, encouraging them not to shout, and really kind of looking after their voice.
Great, fantastic. Time has really flown away with us. I think we're going to have to get you guys back on at some point because it's been really insightful, and I think that's demonstrated by the amount of interaction we've had from our listeners. So I'd really like to thank them for their engagement. We've got kind of a few moments to kind of summarize some of the key messages and what you'd like to get across. So just in summary, Steph.
Well, for me, because I know there's so much information we'd love to get across to you, if I could just give the website address again, because I think people can then access the Flying Start website, Talking Takes Off, and actually they can access the speech and language therapy website through that route.
That's right.
The website to go to is www.flyingstart.luton.com/Talking Takes Off. That's the main place to go to, and then you'll be able to pick up lots of the main messages, and also some online sites as well, which you can get extra information from.
Sure. Emily, is there anything you'd like to get across? We've got a few seconds.
Absolutely. It's just like we said, it's really kind of making the most of your role as a parent. Enjoy talking, playing, reading, singing with your child. You really make the difference. That's how children learn language, learn communication, by hearing it all around them all day, every day. So you are your child's first and best teacher.
Fantastic.
Agreed.
And as the least qualified person here, but as a dad, I would say it's very important for dads to play their role role
Exactly.
For sure.
and communicate with their children and make that effort and time and take some time out, turn the TV off and really enjoy that time of life in your child's life. Guys, thank you very much again for joining us. Next week, we'll be back with the main man, Fahad Matin, who'll be discussing physical activity. And just finally, like to say Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, and thank you very much for joining us. We'll be back again next week.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. We stream our daily broadcast on inspirefm.org. You'll find all our daily updates on our social media at Inspire FM Luton.